This has been one of the hardest, most difficult periods of my life lately. I just find that my thoughts flit from topic to topic without any rhyme or reason. Perhaps it's because I am about to graduate, or maybe it's having the understanding that Trillium is no longer going to be an option for people who don't fit in anywhere else. My senior project feels timely in that regard. I was very curious about the ways in which my peers experienced being around someone like me, and whether it was as life-changing for them as it was for me to be around them. You see, I was never supposed to be here. PPS still tucks kids like me away in segregated classrooms until it's time for them to become someone else's problem. I know how unusual it is for me to have had this opportunity, and mourn the school's demise. However, I believe that there are lessons learned that we will take forward into the future that will impact our lives. For example, I have great faith in my classmates having a new outlook on the normalcy of autistics being present in everyday functions, like at school and work, and also in bars and coffee shops and concerts. It seems so obvious, but the reality is that my people are not free, not truly free, to take a prominent place in society. It is this reality that formed the basis of my senior project. Our rights are directly tied to your perceptions of our worth. The rights we have are hard-fought achievements which are constantly under threat due to budget cuts and the political climate that sets those budgets. Therefore, having all of you as allies is more important than ever. Let's work together to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind in our effort to bring social justice issues to the forefront again and again and again. But first, a history lesson. It was not so long ago that people with disabilities were not allowed to go to school with non-disabled peers. It was thanks to laws like the Individuals with Disabilities Act that was enacted by Congress in 1975 that disabled people were given the right to a public education. It was not a guarantee, however, that they would be educated with their peers. Research has shown that all students benefit from being educated together with supports given as needed. It helps all kinds of learners when teachers use different ways to teach a concept to students with varied strengths and challenges. One time I was at a conference and sat in on a session on disability history and the disability civil rights movement, which totally blew my mind. The presenter was going through a recap of how people with disabilities had been exterminated during the Holocaust, and it was both upsetting and eye-opening. It wasn't the first time that I'd heard about that, but I hadn't known that they were the first wave of people killed by Hitler. And it was relatively easy to do. The Germans lead and said that they were going to put them in special schools, but instead they experimented on them and then murdered them. In all likelihood, the families had an inkling of what happened to their family members, but attitudes being quite pessimistic about the value and potential of disabled people probably made this less of a moral issue and more of putting those who were suffering from a pathetic existence out of their misery. It is ethical and socially just to educate students together. Unfortunately, it is still acceptable to segregate students who have disabilities in separate classrooms with different expectations for their future. It relates back to the values and perceptions society has about people with disabilities. Hopefully, my being in school with my peers will carry forth past graduation and into adulthood, reflecting positively on their views. It was an interesting conundrum in which I found myself last fall. How can I measure the impact of simply being around other people? What would they think about disability and their non-disabled responsibility towards people like me? So I created a survey to find out. When you think about it, the people who go to school with me and the other disabled students are a perfect audience for such a survey. They have the opportunity to form opinions that find their roots in the benefits of an inclusive education and the moral compass of social justice. Let's see what 24 Trillium students shared. Question: if I left Trillium and your memory of me was erased, What do you think would be different about the school environment? The level of understanding that the general student body would have when it comes to nonverbalism would probably be less. Nonverbal autism is hard for people to grasp sometimes without learning how to understand someone who needs a letter board or communicates differently. I am hoping that if this were to happen, that the school would remain open-minded and cooperative toward others and get along regardless of differences. I think very few students would know letterboard. Also, it would be sad. Even though I have my own disabilities and know other people with disabilities, I think that my experience knowing you has given myself and other students a better understanding of disabilities like yours and even a better understanding of my own disabilities. Also, I just like your presence and your spirit, and I'd be sad. I have autism, so I would feel more alone with my experiences with autism and probably not talk about it as much as I do. I don't know, a lot of people would probably be the same. Middle schoolers yelling, high schoolers talking about stuff, I don't know. There would be a lack of a specific wholesome energy around the school and in the classroom. A lot. You are a great dude and a voice for social justice for everyone, but also an awesome, badass representative of your community. I am hoping that if this were to happen, that the school would remain open-minded and cooperative towards others and get along regardless of differences. Going to school with someone who is autistic and identifies as a disability activist has positively influenced my perceptions of disability. Strongly disagree, 0%. Disagree, 0%. No opinion, 34%. Agree or strongly agree, 66%.